Guys, so today we have a very special guest, Carter. Carter's the CEO of Epic Services Company. Carter, maybe you can get a little bit context on who you are, what got you into the insurance industry in the first place.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me on here. I know you've started a YouTube channel not too long ago, so I'm going to be one of those early guests on the show. So I really do appreciate it. So I've been in basically the services business since I lied about my age when I was 14 to start flipping burgers at a fast food restaurant because I wanted to be able to make my own money. I didn't want to have to ask mom and dad for money. And eventually that type of a background, I guess, led me to eventually get into the insurance world, which started, 20 plus years ago. My father-in-law had convinced me to get my insurance license, but eventually what really led me to where I'm at today was I was a caddy at a private club that the gentleman that I caddied for one day and caddied for subsequently for the next 2.5 years owned an IMO, and I eventually became a glorified telemarketer. I was pounding the phone, smiling and dialing as an internal wholesaler, as they're known now, but at the time it was pretty much just a glorified telemarketer. So that eventually helped me to make connections with independent insurance advisors, all over the country, hearing some of their challenges that they have on a regular basis. And that number one challenge, of which Epic Services Company was designed to solve for, was client acquisition. Product is not the unmet need, as I say ad nauseum around here, because the best tax and risk mitigation strategies in the world matter not if you've got no clients to implement them with. So I really sort of set out on this journey to do three things better than anybody else: elevate the client experience, create professional contrast, and differentiate competitor-proof advisors that are out there in this industry. So that we've had a very successful business model that's been built around estate and legacy planning. But my background was really just kind of cutting my teeth in the insurance world, like maybe most people do. And now here I am.
Awesome. No, that's very insightful, Carter. And I guess like a lot of people, you just kind of got into this industry. You've obviously been very, very successful. What were some of the early struggles that you faced as an insurance agent?
Yeah, well, actually that's interesting. I'm going to segue into what differentiates me as far as my experience goes. So I was an advisor to advisors working at an IMO, of which most of your listeners, they probably work with on average 2 to 3 different IMOs, always trying to convince them to do business with them. But then what ended up happening as I was an internal wholesaler for an IMO, I developed a relationship with an estate planning attorney.
Okay.
And what happened was I ended up going into the retail practice as an insurance agent, insurance producer, insurance advisor, if you will. But it's there that I discovered, working with an estate planning attorney, really the disconnect between estate planning and financial planning, i.e. life insurance and annuities, right? But it was a great way to break into the retail space and help me to discover something that if I could just build this out and scale it, I knew that that was going to give me an incredible opportunity. And by default, the advisors that I was going to work with eventually give them an opportunity to solve their number one challenge, which is client acquisition. So leveraging that experience and that knowledge and having that frontline experience of working with an estate planning attorney where she would literally put her clients in front of me, like one meeting after the next for an entire week. I would fly out to her office once a month and I was there for an entire week, and she would put client after client after client in front of me. Now, the biggest challenge I had with that back in the day, this is about 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago, was we didn't have Zoom, right? There was no YouTube, right? We didn't have Google Meets and things like that. So following up with prospects to get them to sell life insurance and annuities to them basically took me having to fly back there the next month and then complete the sales process. So that was really the number one challenge. But now with the acceptance of doing virtual meetings for advisors and clients, and you know this as well as anybody with, what it is that you've created there at Room, these households are willing to meet advisors where they're at, right? They will meet them virtually now. But the number one challenge I had back then was we didn't have that ability. So we had to sort of like sit across the table from one another. And now with technology and these households that advisors like myself and, during that time work with, the acceptance of doing virtual meetings is a lot more acceptable now post-COVID.
No, that makes a lot of sense, Carter. And then I know what you guys are doing is heavily reliant on estate planning as an in. So maybe can you explain a little bit about this method, as well as what some of its biggest advantages are?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I read a survey where everything kind of sort of started, I read this survey from the Wealth Council, which is a sort of a preeminent attorney solutions and education platform. Wealth Council did this survey on what do everyday Americans think about estate planning. Well, the number one thing that I took away from that survey was 83% of Americans have not done any of the trust, wills, advanced medical directives, basically getting all of their affairs in order. 83% of Americans have not addressed this. That's a lot of people, right?
Yeah, majority. Yeah.
You start thinking that 83% of basically 75 million households, that's a blue ocean opportunity. So that was what ended up leading me down that path. And the advisors, the enlightened advisors that work with us, that is the subject matter, that is the number one draw, whether it's virtual or doing live workshops, educational workshops. That's the number one draw to get the mass affluent, as we call them, which predominantly are the ones that insurance advisors are working with, to come to an event, or at least to register for an event. So it is all about using estate planning as the subject matter, and then leveraging what we call our multidisciplinary team approach that allows our insurance advisors or financial advisors to basically become the relationship manager of a team of specialists that do all the heavy lifting that ultimately leads them under favorable circumstances to get what I call money in motion. Now, that could be life insurance, it could be annuities, it could even be assets under management. Heck, it could be REITs or long-term care, whatever the case may be, whatever the widget is that they're selling that monetizes those relationships. This is the number one draw that starts that relationship out, or at least lead. It's a lead that can start that cultivating.
Got it. And why do you think it's better to lead in with, for example, estate planning as opposed to going for an annuity sale directly or financial planning directly?
I'm going to answer that question with a observation and an aha moment that one of my advisors, who had been one of our most successful advisors, had been adopting our platform and strategy, told me one day. She came to me, she goes, "Carter, I finally get it," right? Because look, insurance advisors know what type of revenue can be generated from annuity, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is, the number one problem that insurance advisors need to understand is they're probably not the first one that's trying to sell an annuity to somebody, right? It all begins and ends with client acquisition, client relationship building, right? Nurturing those types of relationships. People are not normally going to just trip over themselves to give you, $100,000 or $500,000. You have to build up the trust. So by leading with estate planning, something that the vast majority of advisors, I don't care if they're a financial advisor, insurance advisor, I don't care who you are not leading with, that is the differentiator. So by simply being able to develop and cultivate a relationship around something that is meaningful and impactful for them and their family, we have this question that every single one of our advisors is trained to ask. Basically, how to start a conversation, even. How do you want to be remembered to these households? And when you start a conversation with how do you want to be remembered versus, well, let me tell you about this bonus, or let me tell you about this participation rate, or let me tell you about the, how you can avoid probate with this annuity, that's the low bar. Your prospects that are out there right now, information galore is out there. And all they hear is, oh,
Sure.
here's another salesman trying to sell me something. You've got to get to the very impactful area of their lives. And that's why we have them lead with, how do you want to be remembered? Because how you're remembered will absolutely determine on the level of success that your beneficiaries that you leave behind are going to have. So when you lead with estate planning and legacy planning as a foundational approach, it's a totally different subject and topic that people are not starting with. Everybody's trying to sell something. And look, I get it. In order to monetize a relationship, Allan, you have to be able to get some sort of a transaction to occur. But by leading with this has been the biggest differentiator and wedge driver versus maybe some other provider that they may be working with. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's definitely
No,
something.
this is very helpful. So would you say that agents who use this estate planning are seeing higher conversion rates on their leads or on their prospects?
100%. Because again, the general public, they're, contrary to popular belief, maybe they're not stupid. A 68-year-old and 72-year-old Mr. and Mrs. Jones, they're not stupid. COVID accelerated their experience of being online. Once they got online and were forced to become online, well, guess what they started doing? They started researching. So if you're not Google proofing yourself, you're already fighting an uphill battle. So by being able to solve this challenge that most households have, which is the following: what happens to my stuff when I'm no longer here, right? You hear the phrase about, you can't take it with you. Well, nothing could be more true than you can't take it with you. And by being able to, on the front end, talk about how you're going to be able to create distribution plans, that just naturally leads and flows into that opportunity to then get money in motion. But you've got to build the trust. If you don't build the trust first and foremost, you'll never get a chance to, I say never, you'll get your pound of flesh. I've talked to many of advisor along the way before I even started going down this road that they'll get their pound of flesh, but it's becoming more and more and more difficult for the traditional insurance advisor to even get their pound of flesh because their clients, they're all online and they're all researching you and they're all Googling you. So if you're on online marketing and branding doesn't appear to be good enough to solve for whatever problem that they may have, it's going to be a very difficult uphill battle.
No, this makes a lot of sense, Carter. And the other thing, I mean, it obviously sounds like this approach is working. It's been very successful for dozens of agents. Maybe you can highlight like a one or multiple success stories of an agent who's used this process and what type of results they've seen in, say, a month.
Yeah. So let me finish the story I was sharing earlier. So one of my advisors came to me. They were like, they finally like, hey, Carter, I get it. You got to lead with the estate planning because they lost sell after sell after sell because they tried to what we call jump the shark, where they're like, I know I got to make my money from this annuity, but if you don't, and we train them on this, right? If you don't take them down the path that they started, which is getting their affairs in order and everything, then you'll screw up the opportunity on the back end. This process, I will tell you, is not for everybody because everybody is like transactional minded and they just want to just try to get their pound of flesh and they're okay with that. And that's fine. We work with transformational advisors and I want to share two stories with you. The first one is this advisor in Texas who I was just talking about that came to me and she was like, Carter, I finally get it. You have to continue to get down the path. Then you get a chance to do all this other back end business, right? She had become, her and her husband, they're a duo. Her and her husband had become so successful that, and they only wanted to work, sort of part-time. So they were doing a workshop a quarter, right? For a year, averaging about $75,000 per event to eventually where they got so successful that they went to just doing 2 a year, 1 every 6 months, to doing just 1 a year, to now these were early adopters, to now they get so many referrals and introductions from their already existing clients because they do estate planning. They don't even need to do stranger marketing anymore. They don't even do workshops anymore, but they got to the point where they were averaging about $125,000 per campaign. Okay. So that's number one. And that was that advisor that came to me and said, finally, Carter, I get it. The other one, I'm going to take it back even further, an early adopter. She was a Medicare supplement insurance agent, had never even sold an annuity, and never even talked about estate planning whatsoever. Went through our entire training program, bought our what we call client advisor partner client acquisition kit. We developed all of these go-to marketing strategies for her, trained her on how to be able to give the presentation, was starting to gain a little traction where she was living at in Illinois. Then COVID hit. Now she's got to pivot. So what ended up happening is that she ended up having to move to another state and start all over again. But because we had already been perfecting the process with her from the get in Illinois, once she was able to transfer all that stuff as a complete stranger in Arkansas, she went from never even selling an annuity till she met us and making in Medicare supplements, she was making like $85,000 a year, to now this is fast forwarding 7 years, but that'll tell you two things. Number one, these advisors, once they go down this path, they never stop because it's successful, right? She went from making $85,000 a year to, I think this year, some 7 years later from the time she got her first annuity contract with us, to making $800,000 this year in Arkansas, by the way. We're not talking about
in 7 years of annuity sales or 7 years in the insurance industry.
annuity sales. Yeah, she had never sold an annuity when we met her 7 years ago. She was making $85,000 a year. She made last year in 2024 almost $800,000.
Wow. Okay. No, that's impressive. And that was all leading with estate planning.
100% every single time without fail.
Got it. No, that's amazing. Awesome. Cool. No, I love this. And I think this is a very innovative way because I talk to a lot of insurance agents, specifically those that sell annuities, and most of them aren't using estate planning as an in. So I definitely can see the big opportunity. And I'm curious, Carter, like what's kind of your vision with the Epic Services company? Because you and I have spoken previously on various occasions, but I'm not too familiar with kind of like the vision there and what you guys do. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, obviously, we consider ourselves your client acquisition partner as an insurance advisor, or even, register rep, RIAs. We work with, everybody's, but almost, without exception, though, people are going to be insurance licensed. So number one, because we can solve the number one challenge as far as I'm concerned is client acquisition. That's why the advisors who adopt our platform are very satisfied and they don't go anywhere. In fact, I can't tell you how many times I get introduced to an insurance advisor simply because another insurance advisor is doing it with success, yada, yada, yada. But the grander vision, obviously, is being able to expand our reach. Estate planning as a topic is very, very hot right now. Now, the difference is we've had the legwork and the groundwork and the foundation laid for over 8 years, perfecting the ability to ultimately get a prospect to become an estate planning client. Once you become that estate planning client, then again, as I mentioned earlier, under favorable circumstances, you get this opportunity to get money in motion, writing your annuities, writing your life insurance, maybe assets under management, like I said before. And the grander vision is being able to make this accessible and available to different distribution partners. We just hired our chief marketing officer, Rosalie Perkins, who originally comes from Snappy Kraken. And Snappy Kraken is one of those industries that are out there trying to help advisors with marketing. She saw our opportunity and she came on board to help develop partnerships that we're going to have. We've already got a partnership with Mutual of Omaha Mortgage on their mortgage side of the equation, reverse mortgage, because all of those clients are 65 plus. So making inroads with those larger financial institutions has already, happened. And eventually what will happen is Epic Services Company will just become a household name. And those insurance advisors out there that are not adopting it, something like ours, we feel like ours is obviously the best because, we know it from the advisor's perspective on the challenges that they have and their marketing concerns that they might have, or their lack of understanding how to market. Again, that's why Vroom comes into focus there. So our bigger vision is just to try to make us be the preeminent client acquisition partner for advisors all over the country to help them ultimately make more money than they've ever made in their lives, adopting our process and our platform that is built for scale for them. A total turnkey ecosystem.
Got it. Okay, cool. Sorry, let me fix this. And I do have a question, Carter, because I think this is really, really helpful. And I love all the insight you've shared. I found this very insightful. Why do you think a lot of insurance agents right now don't use estate planning? Do you think it's they're not aware of it, or they don't have the right resources and infrastructure to properly utilize it?
I think it's the latter primarily, is that they don't have an infrastructure or a team of specialists that can be there for them. So we've adopted again and really enhanced this whole multidisciplinary team approach. Now, probably the number one reason is that it scares them. They're fearful of the phrase estate planning. If I've done it once, I've done it 1,000 times, explaining to an insurance advisor. I'll even ask them the question. It'll be a leading question. Hey, are you an estate planner? And they'll be like, no. Because when they start thinking estate planning, they start thinking in legal jargon and legal terms. Yeah. But it's pretty simple. An estate plan, right? All that means is I need to plan somebody's an estate. And an estate is just simply everything somebody owns. Yeah. So when an insurance advisor writes an application and they fill out the beneficiary, they just plan somebody's estate. So they are, for all intents and purposes, an estate planner. Yeah. Now, I don't ask them, are they an estate planning attorney? And what we do is we have attorneys that are part of their team that make them look bigger than they are, that collaboratively work with them, that understand what their makeup is and understand what their goals and objectives are. So this is a very collaborative, team process that we have that retrofits into somebody's practice without them feeling like they have to be overwhelmed and become specialists around estate planning. They just stick to what they do and what they know, and we teach them enough to be dangerous, if you will, but it is a complete turnkey process that we have for them to win what I call the relationship war.
Okay, cool. No, this is awesome, Carter. I love this. And maybe some agents are watching, maybe they're newer to the business, or they're working some type of marketing and it's not working for them. They're not performing at the level that they want, or maybe someone's doing all right, but they just can't crack a specific production level. A lot of agents I talk to, maybe they want to sell over $1 million a month in annuities consistently, and they're not hitting these types of plateaus. Like, what type of advice do you have for them?
Well, the number one thing I would say is when you look at our platform, it's education based. And the reason why it's such a huge opportunity for those who are already in the industry, whether they're starting out or not, even if they've hit a plateau or if they're trying to, peak or whatever, we've got the tools and the resources internally that allow them to be able to go back to any like low hanging prospects and raising the awareness around estate planning. Really easy, simple tools that are personalized and customized to each and every advisor partner, as we call them. So those insurance agents out there, all you have to do is be willing. We will coach you. We will train you. We will give you every single tool that you need. You'll need a budget. There's no doubt about that. But you understand what that's like, right, Allan? Everybody needs to be able to have a budget in order to be able to adopt this. But it is very cost effective to be able to do that. I mean, I even put guys on payment plans so they can get started so that we don't have to delay helping them grow their revenue and increase their practice.
Cool. No, Carter, this is awesome. And in terms of of what you guys are doing, you obviously have some foresight. It seems like you want to be like a leader in this industry. So I'm just trying to maybe gauge the audience. Where do you see the future of this industry heading in, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I will tell you right now, when I mentioned earlier that estate planning is a very hot topic right now, I mean,
Yeah.
the competition is intense. There's a lot of companies out there that have been very well funded that are inferior to what it is that we can do because we took a very advisor first look at everything. How do we help advisors grow their practice? Estate planning. There's a lot of competition out there. And if you're not adopting some type of a platform, you will get lost in the dust. Someone's going to be working with these prospects with this subject matter. The other thing that I will also say in this industry, and especially like in the IMO world, where I come from, there's a lot of aggregation going on. There's a lot of consolidation that's going on. And it's going to become more and more and more difficult to kind of sort of compete against some of these behemoths out there. And if you are not partnering up with someone that can help you look on the surface to be bigger than you are, because right now, even as we sit here today, every insurance advisor out there, whether they like it or not, are competing against Edward Jones or Merrill Lynch or Ameriprise.
Yeah.
And those advisors adopt within that framework is because they've got a support system, right? They've got credibility, they've got name brand. Well, that's what we help advisors do. We help them look like they're bigger, and we create this team approach that helps them to grow their practice, to become more of a transformational advisor that ultimately helps their prospects to become clients in this arena that we call estate and legacy planning. And that simple thing is going to be, it is the direction that this industry is going over the next 5, 10, 20, years.
Okay, cool. And what are your thoughts on people who don't adapt and don't start leading in with estate planning or being more creative?
Well, I'll say it like this. I've been saying it to advisors right now who have adopted it, who refuse to adopt EAP. These insurance carriers that they're writing business with right now, there's going to come a point where there will be no more paper. There's no more going to be like physical signing or whatever. That is inevitable to happen. So I warn them, I go, look, you better start adopting the digital age and doing EAPs and everything, much in the same way that if you don't adopt an estate planning first, or at least an estate planning solution, you will lose out on those advisors who are going to be adopting that, because it is the number one way to cultivate relationships, to ultimately create generational opportunities for not only the beneficiaries, but those that even follow behind them. And if you want to create enterprise value for your practice, you have to adopt an estate planning, solution, period, full stop.
No, this is awesome. Yeah, I mean, when you and I spoke a few months ago about this, I was very mind blown because a lot of the advisors I talk to, they're not doing this or not thinking this way. So I think it's definitely a great opportunity for a lot of advisors to capitalize on. And building on that, what role do you think, say, digital marketing, automation, and AI will play in this type of model?
Yeah, look, AI's here. Machine learning, it's here. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Digital marketing, we've been talking about, digital transformation for the longest time. Well, we are actually now in the digital age. Everything's going, AI, whatever. But here's where the huge opportunity presents itself. The typical buyer, right? The typical ICP, as we call it, ideal client profile, that especially an annuity producer wants, is someone that's in their mid to late 60s, early 70s. They want out of the market. They want upside potential. They love the idea of the index annuity, right? Those ideal client profiles are the ones that we understand they're sort of still scared of the digital part of it. But that's why we always, and I was adamant about this, we are never, ever, ever going to lose sight of what the end user's expectations are. Even though we leverage technology and we do virtual meetings and things like that, when it comes to estate planning, we always have a human component, all types of support. We're virtually meeting them, wherever they're at. But those are the types of things that an insurance advisor, needs to understand, that they have a huge opportunity if they adopt having, the AI can teach you plenty of stuff. Automation can deliver plenty of stuff, but it's still going to be we're in a relationship business, Allan, period.
Yeah, for sure.
That's never going to stop. Now, at some point in the future, maybe way down the road, the Gen Zers of the future or whatever, they may only want to use their phone and they don't want to have any interaction. But I'm sorry, the greatest wealth transfer, the $84 trillion, let me repeat that, $84 trillion that is going to change hands in the next 24 years. That's a Cerulean Associates statistic. The vast majority of that are your clients that you want to work with. And 83% of them have not addressed this subject. You can be the hero to that story, which gives you the inroad to be able to get money in motion. So AI will be there to adopt, it'll be there to educate, it'll be there to make our lives simpler, but it will never replace the relationship emotional component that an insurance advisor can provide way better. And your clients, listen up, insurance advisors, your clients that are 65, 70, 75, they want to actually have a relationship. Now they're willing to have it over Zoom or over, Google Meet, but they need interaction. They need face-to-face type of stuff. So this is a huge opportunity that presents itself that you can leverage both the technology and the relationships part of this that insurance advisors are so good at.
Yeah, for sure. No, this makes a lot of sense. No, I love it, and I can sense the energy, Carter. I can sense that you're really passionate about this. So I love that part. You've definitely shared some gold here. In terms of what you're doing and how agents can leverage estate planning in terms of using it as an in to sell a lot more annuities. And since a lot of people are not doing this, I think it's like a blue ocean strategy that others can capitalize on, right? So Carter, thank you so much for your time here, and maybe you can share where people can connect with you and learn more about the Epic Services Company. I'll include it in the notes in my YouTube video, but maybe you can tell people what's the best way to reach you. Is it through your email or how is it?
That would be great. If you have a LinkedIn account, you can find me on LinkedIn, Carter Wilcox. Just type in Carter Wilcox, and there's not very many of us out there. You can go to our website, www.epicservicescompany.com. You can put that out there. And then you can email me, carter@epicservicescompany.com. And then, we can meet. We can have an initial 15 virtual minute meeting. And then I can share with you on why you really need to adopt this strategy. And I'll leave you with this, Allan. Most insurance advisors, again, are afraid of estate planning because they feel like they have to become estate planning specialist. They don't. They just need to adopt a team of specialists that can make them look bigger so that they can ultimately get a lot of that money in motion. And this presents an incredible opportunity for them.
Cool.